Yeah. Thank you for being on the podcast today. Could you start by introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, Chanin, and thanks a lot for having me. So, my name is Peter. I'm from Budapest, Hungary, and I'm the CEO and co founder of Vizzu, a startup set out to change how people interact with data.
Awesome. Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? What is your educational background, and prior to starting up Visu, what have you done?
Sure. So, I studied international relations at one of the local universities. But even back then, I was intrigued by the opportunities that the technology and the internet provides. So, I found myself working for a relatively big educational administration tool service provider here in Hungary. We had a couple of hundreds of thousands of pupils and teachers, and so I had the chance to learn the ropes and understand how technology works and how it is how I can work with developers and build a product. And we revamped the whole UI of the product to make it a lot user friendly. And there I had to interact a lot with our users. It was a super interesting like first experience. And then I joined another company. Yeah, after a couple of years, we realized that such things are called startups, since we were trying to build something unique and cool, and just change the world, or at least sell it internationally. And actually, so Vizu is all about data storytelling and animated charting and interaction. And already back then, which was 13 years ago, this thing was based on animated charting, or at least one of them. We built two products there. One of them was about contextual ad targeting, and then the other one was aimed at, and I'm going to show just quickly a snippet of it. So the other one was focused on helping online media outlets understanding where the traffic is coming from in real time. And so we created this screen for them where they could see where the sources of visitors, and also in the middle section the articles. And in this interactive tree map, the articles, like, you could just spot any rising stars because the size of the article showed the visitors from the last 15 minutes, and yeah, lightness, how old or new the article was. So there was a lot of information crammed into a one very intuitive user interface. And so basically that's how I met with one of the co-founders of Vizzu that I'm currently working together. And this was a rather successful venture, so we could sell it around Europe to bigger online media outlets, but it didn't really take off globally, I would say. And then I joined some other startups. I mean, this one, the previous one, I was the CEO of, and then I was the CEO of two other startups, or like one startup with two products, because we pivoted in the middle. We were focusing on the needs of mobile application developers, so that was a very tech heavy thing. It was also very interesting, but sadly, it wasn't successful. And then, I mean, so startupping is really hard and it takes a toll on you. So it was back in 2016 when I decided I just need to get away from it, or at least stop being a startupper myself. And I kind of switched sides and turned into a product development and just general startup mentor and advisor. And I worked for different companies, mostly here in Hungary and some of them around Europe. Uh, as such, I loved it. I mean, I met with a ton of super driven people trying to build cutting edge tech, and this kind of inspiration is something that I think, at least myself, I really need to keep going and to feel that whatever I do could really just make some change and make some impact. And already, actually, back with FruitFlan, this colorful real-time data visualization tool, we managed to get into Startup Sona, which was like a no equity accelerator program in Helsinki, Finland. a pretty famous one actually, and the mood there. So I spent a month in Finland, or a little bit more, and I just loved it, and that really hooked me for taking these roller coaster rides on the on the startup roller coaster. So even though I stepped back and I was thinking about just yeah, turning this advisory or this one man show of mine into either a product agency or something similar. Then I yeah, so one of my previous colleagues and from Fruitsland started to work on his own ideas, on his own concepts about data visualization and how we could revolutionize the way people interact with data. And then he started showing me early video prototypes of the thing, and I got hooked. And so yeah, after a while, I joined the team, and then soon after, well, it was still the very early stages. We decided it's best if I become the CEO of the company, and so but that's not my personal story. I mean, it is, but it's more like the story of Vizzu, which I would love to talk about in a bit more detail. So that's my life before Vizzu, at least.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah. So before we go into the backstory of Visu, could you tell us what is Visu all about?
Yeah, so very so from very like from the bird's eye view, or kind of like that. We really want to just enable everyone to better connect with their data, to get a sense of their data, to have an intuitive user interface for data that anyone without any specific training can easily understand. And it's I mean, I don't think it has to be explained to anyone watching this podcast how important this skill is to understand data, and to be able to share the insights you find with others. And we have this very, it turned out, very unique approach to this, and so that's why we're working on it. But in just one sentence, really, like, we want to help people better understand the world of data, and make data understandable for all through our revolutionary visualization tools. So that's the mission and vision of Vizzu.
Hmm. Right. Sounds good. So what are some of the challenges that Visu is solving?
Um, so you have to keep in mind that, and based on the examples that I'm going to show you, I think it's going to be a lot clearer. But so basically, we have a novel approach, a know-how about data visualization that we encompassed into an engine that can generate a plethora of different charts and can seamlessly animate between those charts. And we then added different ways people can use this engine. Initially, open source coding tools, and now very recently, point and click, no code, online web app. But these are all just, I would say, initial ways we were able to productize and encompass our technology. So if we approach the whole thing from the challenges perspective, right now Vizzu can help you quickly build animated data stories from a static data set. That's what it does. And for in terms of challenges, it's like if you are, let's say, a marketing manager who tries to explain the latest campaign results, or if you're the manager of the company who has to show how their area performed or their plans to the board, or if you're a business analyst and you want to have a really deep discussion with your boss about the data heavy subject, then you can just sit down and fiddle with Vizzu, maybe together by a shared screen or sitting at the same space, or yeah, or if you're a teacher and you try to explain some historical data heavy subject. This is obviously one way to make it very interesting for your students. Also, if you're an influencer, if you are there trying to produce a content that catches the attention of many, that delivers some key insights, and you want to make it really easy to understand for anyone, and enjoyable and engaging, then I would absolutely suggest you to give Vizzu a spin.
Mhm. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so I guess, it would be also good if, could you show us what is Visu? Maybe you could walk us through, Visu.
Yeah, absolutely. How about I show you some historical elements, so like about the path we took here, and then I can show you the current product. I think that's the easiest way to understand what's going on here. So, firstly, I talked about a little bit about my current co-founder, former colleague Andrew Kanyal, and this was one of the videos he showed me. So, this is an early video prototype of Vizzu. This has nothing to do with. I mean, we've come a long way since here, but basically, he started doing experiments in terms of like how. People could understand the changes in the data or get a sense of their data, and how animation and animated interactions could be used as a tool to basically just build something like a language around data, a new sort of interaction where you ask questions from your data, and every answer is a chart, and basically these charts are being connected with animation to the previous phase, makes it super easy for you to just make these connections between the views, these charts that you generated. But as you can see, he had some super advanced like ideas, which the current tool is still pretty far away from. We will get there sometime, but this is so we currently have a single chart, and we are more focused on the storytelling aspect. But this video is just a great way to like show you what Andrew was originally thinking about, and I mean this still looks awesome, and it's still something that I think I just can't wait for us to be able to build it. And So originally, as I said, I'm going to share something else. So when I shared, this thing was already embedded into a super early desktop prototype that only us, the three of us, could use to build stories. It was super painful to do it, but it already showed the novel aspects and some of the benefits that animated charts and that Vizu could provide. And so what we did with that is we started building animated data stories that we like, we shared, and this is still fruit flan, either with the press. So for example, this is something that Visual Capital has published, that's a video showing just super easily like what the area of different continents are is, and then how so we basically just compared sorry for the video quality, it's something on their side. So we compared the area, the population, and the GDP of continents, and so they really liked it, and they helped us get the message, and yeah, basically that such a tool exists out there. And it's a super simple story, yet it tells you a lot. If you see that, for example, Africa has 16% of the population, yet they only produce 3% of GDP, and things like that. And we did the same and published some stories on Reddit. So, like for example, this is one of my favorites. It shows how much revenue a chocolate bean farmer, so like so like gets from a $1 chocolate bar, and it was I think the videos didn't preload before our call, sort of to keep you waiting. So, like, at least for the viewers. Let me see if I can do something on this tab so that the videos preload before we get there. So, yeah, here we go. So it's like, again, a very simple visualization.
Yeah, that's a lot of likes. I think it was like 45,000, right?
Yeah, yeah, a lot of likes. Yeah. Okay, now I get you. I get you. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so yeah, they don't really like it because we had this huge ad there. But even with that, it collected 37,000 upvotes before it was banned. And if you look at some of the numbers for others, it's like, yeah, this one was 37,000. The comparative might of continents was 60,000. This one about the general elections 4 years ago, or the U.S. presidential elections, was 45,000, and so on. So these are really, really good numbers, and this means tens of millions of viewers altogether, which obviously we are super, super proud of, and helped us a lot in raising some VC money for us as a startup. So we basically, with the help of building these stories in house, proved that people like the output that someone can create with Vizzu, and if we could make other people, as many as we can, capable of building similar stories, then this can be a real game changer for data storytelling and data visualization in general. But so the first what we managed to raise, the amount of money was clearly not enough, which we raised actually from local players, mostly angels and smaller VC. Was clearly not enough to build a proper, fully fledged end user tool. That was one thing we realized, and the other thing we realized was that we have a solution, and we're looking for problems. It's a quite, so it's not the typical startup way, I would say. And so we were thinking about how we could involve others, how we could build an expert community around Vizzu that help us with their feedback and with their ideas, with ways they start using Vizzu in basically validating the need, and finding where the direction we should take, what kind of tool we should build first, for example. And so in order to do that, we decided that we will turn the whole technology open source, and we build coding interfaces for highly skilled professionals to start using our technology. So obviously, it's a step back from the vision of making data accessible and enabling everyone to use our tool. But this felt like a natural interim step to get experts on the side, and to build a community of experts to do this. And so back in 2021, we first released Vizzu Lib. This is an open source charting library for JavaScript professionals, so for front end developers. And so what it does is it if you just added different chart configurations to it, it will automatically just animate between these chart configurations using Vizzu engine. So this is basically, I think, still the easiest way to create animated charts in JavaScript, even though obviously there are many great tools, data visualization tools out there. And then we realized that there is another group of experienced users who might even be in bigger need for animated charts and data storytelling, who are so data scientists using Python. And so we basically created a Python wrapper for our JavaScript charting library, enabling anyone to use it in Jupyter and similar notebooks. Using Python, which was great. So it's basically the same thing. You add some code, you run it, and you end up with an animated chart. And it was so we had great feedback. I think if I had to choose from the JavaScript developers and the data scientists, it's clear that the data scientists were more enthusiastic. I think it's because they have this challenge of having to share the results of their analysis with others much more often. For developers, it's quite rare to have to use charts, and So it's just a tinier part of their job, whereas data scientists have these kind of challenges that Vizzu can be used for on a more like regular basis, I'd say. And this one already created some waves. I had invitations to high profile conferences like EuroPython and PyData New York and PyData Seattle and all those PyData meetups and that are there that we are super grateful for. And we actually became an affiliated project of NumFocus ever since, and I'm very very grateful for the NumFocus folks for introducing us to this community. And on the product side, we realized that we would need to add a little extra for making it easier for people to use this. And so we released a little addition, a little extension of iPyVizu called iPyVizu Story that basically lets you build these animated data stories that you can just present. So they weren't dependent on notebook cells being rerun one after the other, but basically you had yourself, and it should be appearing on this example. I think that's it's always better to show specific examples. So this a story like this you could and obviously can still create with using a Jupyter notebook, where the animation happens only when you click on these buttons. You can also use a clicker or your keyboard. But the thing is that it's already something you can build, present, and share animated data stories with as a data scientist using only Python. So obviously, this was a game changer, and this already showed the power of the tool, and it proved once again that the initial direction we should take is about data storytelling and helping people share their insights. And so I think one more notable development is when we had an integration with Streamlit. It was like a senior data engineer. I think that's his official title from Streamlit side, Zachary Blackwood, who created a bidirectional component that lets you embed Vizzu charts into Streamlit apps. I mean, this is just a super easy, very simple implementation, and it's a lot slower than it usually is due to the fact that I'm sharing my screen. But yeah, if you go to intro to Vizzu and Streamlit app, you can, and there's obviously the GitHub repo behind it. It's easy to learn how things work, and it's again so usually with a couple of tens of lines of Python, you can build a fully fledged um, like little interactive explorer like this one that shows how much revenue different music formats generated over the years, and the user can just change the year, and then the chart will animate to show you the results of that year. Actually, I think is the total number, so it's up to 2007. I should have updated the title. But yeah, it's easy as that. And also the integration with Streamlit helped us starting to showcase some of the capabilities that we weren't able to do without solely with the Python and JavaScript interfaces. I think this is the greatest example of that. So here it's again the amount of money that different music formats generated. It's going to load in a second, and so here the user can just change again a lot of different things. So you can imagine this as an interactive explorer that contains sales data, for example, for or a report or a dashboard, if you will, for company metrics. And if a non-data scientist, so just a business user, clicks around and changes revenue from volume or aggregate things on format level instead of per year, or adds other formats that are in the data, sorted by value and things like that. So they can all do that. And even so, and then obviously every change is resulted in an animation connecting it with the other, and also in the background a story is being created. And this is super important. So let me just download it. It's an HTML file. Uh, I'm going to just open it very quick, download and open it very quickly. So because this shows an important concept that Vizzu had from the get-go, and this was the first time we could show it. So basically, every change that this business user generated just by clicking around and using those buttons and levers and whatnots around the chart. So every stage got saved as a slide in an interactive story. So basically, exploring your data visually, generating different views, and trying to understand, let's say, your department's contribution to the whole company's sales results, for example. That's something very typically a good fit for a Vizzu story. In the background, you just your these stages, these views that you generate, got saved, and you can just share your thought process, basically the results of your thought process, as a super engaging animated data story very easily. And yeah, I would also, if you want to learn actually the Python version, I would encourage you to go to the Vizzu Builder Streamlit app. It lets you create a plethora of, and I'm not going to explain it very much, but this also shows the flexibility of our tool, and also Streamlit. So you can just very simply, I mean, still you have to click around quite a lot, but pretty simply you can generate a ton of different charts with the same configuration, and it also shows. So these are just I selected some series from a sample data frame that I uploaded here, and right here. But it takes some time. But Vizzu will generate different charts, kind of like suggestions that you can build using these configurations. So adding year, the quarter, and the items sold on the chart. It should be appearing very soon. It's again a lot slower because of the screen sharing. So this is usually like 10 times quicker. But you know, it was still something quite limited in many other ways. Even though, yeah, and as you can see, we also help you learn to use our Python interface. So we generate you the Python code. You can build stories from these charts. You can use a ton of different features. That's how it works. And so that was the, let's say, the historical overview. I'm sorry if it took a little longer. And then we raised an additional funding round. We just actually announced that, but it happened a little like further back. This time, like Interactive Venture Partners, the which is backed by Thomas Peterson, and Two Sigma, the U.S. hedge fund, decided to invest. The former leading the round, and a couple of other angels. And finally, we felt like now we have the money to turn this thing into an end user tool that anybody can use. And we actually built this in the last couple of months, and we released it to public beta just a little over a week ago. So we are super excited and proud that we reached this milestone, and now anyone can just upload their data and build animated data stories. So you have to keep in mind, I'm going to show you the tool in a second, that it's still in early beta. So there are a ton of limitations that we're working to remove from. We will talk a little bit about what we think the future holds for us. But right now you can just have a CSV file, so a static data file that you can upload and start fiddling with. And we, for example, have currently limitations on the format of the data that we like, and also obviously the size of it. And we would expect you to keep that format into account and transform your data to fit that format. But we are already working on features making it easier for you. So, I mean, let me get there just a second. Okay, so I'm going to show you the current most advanced tool of Vizzu at the moment. Uh, here you go. Alrighty. So, um, yeah, these are my Vizzus here, but I'm going to create just another one to show you the whole process. I'm going to upload a CSV file that contains information about Apple's sales results. I get to review my data that I just uploaded. These get every column gets categorized if it's time series, categories, or quantities. We do that automatically, but you can change it if for some reason Vizzu haven't been able to look at it properly. And as you can see, it has the year. We have a category, so like a bigger category. We have products, revenue, inflation adjusted revenue, and sales. And if I'm fine, maybe this can be the last time I've seen my data. And so we arrive here at the most important interface, which is where I can just start building my charts. So I can see the data series here, and if I add revenue, for example, I already end up with a chart that contains the total number of revenue for both. It's 10 years of data in there, and we automatically aggregate it. So you don't need those sum if or sum functions from Excel that you used before. And I'm creating a new slide here. This one will be more automatic very soon, and add the year. And so I'm going to be looking at revenue by year, as easy as that. And as you can see here on the right side, I get some suggestions, a little bit similarly to the Builder app that I showed you, where I have these suggestions on how I could show the same kind of data. So I could turn these bars colorful, and but I don't think that actually fits the data very well, and it limits me in adding color later on. But whatever suits your needs. You can turn this into a bubble plot very easily. Or I think actually what could be more handy is just a simple line chart. Because here you can see the trend, and you can see that Apple's revenue was increasing over the years. And then if I want to compare this with the inflation adjusted revenue, I'm going to these are the data series that are currently on my chart, revenue and year. And I can just replace revenue with inflation adjusted revenue with 2 clicks, and then I have a slightly modified chart. And if I you know animate between these slides that I've started to build this data story, then these are obviously, again, since we're in Vizzu, connected via animation, so you can use your keyboard buttons as well. So you can see that yes, the growth curve is still there, even though it's a little more flat than it was. And so next up, I just want to dig deeper, obviously, and see, for example, like the category. So like based on these categories, how the revenue was outlining. And initially, this is not a good chart. So we still have to work, for example, on this part, as I said. But I have these kind of suggestions, and I can just pick this one, for example. This will have a good natural connection with the line chart that is here. And so yeah, basically I just split it, the revenue to iPhone, iPad, and Mac, and other. And for example, I don't think the values here, like shown on the chart, add a ton of sense. So using the style tab, which is still very limited this time, I can just turn off the data labels. And so it's a lot more clear now that something is going on here. So instantly you can see that the revenue from iPhone, iPad, and Mac is kind of flat. It fluctuates a little bit, but it doesn't grow. And so I again have the chance to make it more apparent what's going on here, to just experiment around with these configuration buttons as well that appear around here. So I can just, for example, switch from value to percentage. And then it's totally clear that other products, other revenue sources for Apple have become much more relevant to them over the last decade. Or well, I can also just split uh, these components, and then it's even more clear that that iPhone, iPad, and Mac are kind of flat, and this the other part is still growing. And in a couple of weeks, you would be able to just click on others, highlight it, and filter to only include that, and then drill deeper and start seeing on the product level. We are still adding that feature, but basically you already have an initial data story that you can just present. So if you go to present mode, this is basically the player that you have here. You can go back to any of your previous slides, and again with a clicker or with your mouse, or you can zoom, go to any of your slides that you want, and then Vizzu will do these animated automated transitions. And soon you will be able to share the data story that you created. So that's the current version of Vizzu. You can use it completely free, so no strings attached. If you go to vizzu.io and click on the Get Started for Free button, you can just sign up and start using the tool right away. We already also added some samples for you. So this is the screen you will arrive to if you here's the new data story that I just created, and you have two samples that we already prepped for you, so you can start fiddling with it and just checking out the data stories that we created without having any data at your disposal. And also on the site, you feel free to take a look around. We added some quotations that people like Richie from the senior co-founder of Polars said about our tool, and you can just scroll through these benefits that we identified. And we are obviously super interested in what you think about what we do. So there's always the feedback button that appears on the screen. Actually, yeah, here you go. So if you have anything to add, just and you try to feel free to use it. Yeah. So that's what Vizzu is today.
Mhm. Yeah, looks good. Looks very good. Yeah. So I could see from what you have presented, like Visu is more kind of like a interactive data charting library that kind of like provides the as we can see the transition from one chart to the other chart, and it makes it very fluid. Um, and yeah, you did a good job of showing like the progression over the years about like how Visu came to be and kind of like what is in store for users. So we could see that it has progressed from a JavaScript framework, and then it then supports Python, and then it works in a web app environment via Streamlit. But before that, there's like a story version for the Jupyter Notebook, and now you have like kind of like a no code platform where users could just plug in their CSV data.
Absolutely. And just to add one more thing, the original engine is actually, so one more technology. The original engine is actually built in C++. That's why it's so robust, and we're using WebAssembly to compile it in the browser.
Right. Yeah. So one question that kind of popped up during your presentation was like, what's the most difficult chart that can be created with Visu?
The most difficult chart. Um, yeah. I mean, yeah, I have to think about that one. So basically, the hardest part of this question for me is that for us, mostly all the charts are the same. We are using, and this is the really big thing in what Andrew discovered and embedded in their studies and then in our proto, in our engine, and so on, is that you can have one set of rules that you can describe any chart with. And this is what's encompassed in Vizzu. So basically, for us, each chart is the same. We are just adding different data series and to different like axes and channels. We decide if a category or a quantity determines the color of the markers. or the size of the markers, the vertical or the horizontal position of the markers, it's all the same for us. I mean, I guess one of the, so for example, for us, it's natural that if you have a single stacked bar chart, like one bar with colored sections, and if you put that into the polar coordinates, you'll end up with a donut chart. That's something that's very natural for me, and figured not very natural for non-Vizu users. So we for example, so for us, it's both, almost all of the charts are the same, uh, but we have some specific challenges. For example, with line and area charts where you have to connect the markers, poses a different type of challenge than, for example, no axis charts or charts without an axis, like a tree map or a bubble chart. But these are all, they can be put under the same roof, as Vizzu proves it, and use the same logic.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a very good eye opener. I remember there's like a TED talk on the GDP data set, where Hans Rosling kind of go over the GDP data set, kind of like with the animated bubble charts. And I think that could easily be recreated using the Visu library.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a big fan of Hans Rosling, and actually, for example, one of our major, so we love those talks, and one of our major contributors, Sebastian Flores from Chile, originally recreated the Gapminder, this thing that Hans Rosling built in Vizzu Streamlit. And he even from then he even created an animation where a chart turns into the logo of PyCon Chile, and then to another chart. So there are obviously very creative ways to use this technology, and that we obviously build on the achievements of people who came before, and research. So Hans Rosling has always been an important inspiration for us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you also mentioned about how Visu is a good tool for like various professionals, like data scientists. Particularly, what stood up to me was the content creators. I see there's a big value in kind of like adding meaning or story to data, and as content creator, I mean this tool would allow like how allow us to essentially convey information in a more digestible format, and being able to see the animated chart like it's also a cool feature as well. It's appealing to the eye, and yeah, I mean it totally a good way to allow users to be engaged.
Thanks. Yeah, that's actually a key thing. So, and that's what we found. Engagement is a lot higher. So these days, when you try to show, it's both for content creators, but also for business professionals presenting charts. Uh, Based on our research, people spend around half their time explaining what you can see on the chart instead of why it matters. Because the way it currently works is like, I show you a chart, I explain what's on the chart, I explain what it matters, I take it away, I show you another chart, I do the same, and you have to make the connection between these views, which are usually from the same data set, within your head, which is a very abstract, very mentally heavy burden. Whereas because we're using a completely different part of our brain to just identify moving parts, when you can do this connection using animation, it becomes a lot easier and a lot more fun. And we see that also with these publishers that we work together. So the time spent on page when there was an interactive Vizu chart in it increased like fourfold. So obviously, content publishers, content creators, we view them as super important early user group of Vizu, and obviously important ways to show the capabilities of our tool to a wider audience.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like aside from data scientists, which are kind of like the main audience for the Data Professor channel, in my prior occupation as a professor at university, Scientists, researchers also find great value in like this interactive data tool. So back when I was in uni, Visu was not the tool. It was not available yet. It was like quite a while back. Um, I could imagine how useful it would be for publishers to embed like interactive data charts directly into their article, maybe the online version, and viewers, readers could play around with the data. What is very interesting to me, as you have already demonstrated in your animated charts, is kind of like the logical connection between like several of the data points, and how this cluster of data point then becomes a chart, like we call it, becomes a bar chart A for group A, instead of, as you mentioned, kind of like guessing how are one chart related to the next one. But if we see the animated one, is it more or less makes that deductive deduction more easier for the viewers.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is one of the key aspects that we see Vizu provides value to people. So we like to call it like this. You can just fiddle with your data, basically like as you were playing with clay in your hands without restraint. You can just look at it from different angles, and you still are in the one universe. You can still just move from one point to the other. So every chart is basically, imagine you have a data cube, and you're looking inside from one specific angle, and different charts basically are different keyholes you use to look into the data cube, whereas Vizu will help you just have the whole cube in your hand and just turn it around, and look at it from different angles without restraint. So that's the idea behind this, and we think that this kind of flexibility and ease can be delivered to people without specific expertise. And we will rely heavily on generative AI to lower the bar and help people, for example, transform their data that they want to upload. So take that burden off, uh, give them ways to interact with the chart in natural language or in other ways, um, and make it simple. We like generate the first couple of slides for them. We have a couple of ideas around it. We are still early on describe, like we haven't decided what the first features would be that we add from the AI perspective, but we definitely see a great potential for even lowering the barrier of entry for anyone not being familiar with Vizu or with charts, with data storytelling, and just give them this sense of freedom, and just, you can make no mistake here. It's like the result of everything you do is going to be another chart, and if you don't need it, you can just remove it. But if you need it, it's going to become a super cool animated data story that you can just go on stage and present to anyone, and people will be engaged, people will understand what you try to tell them. And so this is what we're working towards very heavily.
Right. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I was just wondering, like, how many different charts does Visu supports?
Um, I think so. I remember Andrew because he's like the most deep into identifying these. So if we're only talking about chart forms that are very well known, because I can generate charts for you with Vizu that fit all the criteria of a chart, yet we don't use them. So, for example, a scatter plot in Polar that looks like the target in a shooting range won't tell you too much, even though it's a chart. But if you're only talking about charts that make sense, I think maybe around 100, a bit more. I know he made over 200 examples of charts, but sometimes the difference is not that big that you would call it as a separate chart or something. So, yeah. And with the filtering and zooming opportunities and the drilling, the option to drill down, so to split up a category to a subcategory, years to months or things like that. Obviously, that the the opportunities are endless basically, and this is one thing we have to be very mindful of, that we work hard on. This is a lot of abstraction, this is a lot of complexity that we handle in the engine and in the tool, and we want to just tuck it away and hide it from the user and make it very seamless, like, okay, this is the kind of data that I want to see on the chart, and I want to be able to pick how my chart looks, and that should be more or less enough for me to build a data story. I don't have to understand what's going on in the background. That's our aspect towards this.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, like kind of like when like in my prior occupation as a researcher, like creating data visualization for data is an art form, and like trying to convey best format for the given information data frame is also an art. And so like being able to be to create this visualized animated chart, I think is a superpower in a sense. And aside from creating charts, I also think that Visu is a good tool for beginners learning like data science or data analytics for the first time. Kind of being able to see the data frame, being able to see the different categories, being able to kind of infer how that transfers to a bar chart and how that transfer into a heat map, for example, or scatter plot, or how you could facet the data into like multiple subplots, and how you could combine it back, how you could stack the data, bar charts. So I guess aside from like conveying it to the end user, like mentally being able to process all of this different charting format adds a great level of creativity to the data scientist practitioner in developing creative solution. Aside from being able to call the specific functions using traditional charting library, but to also have that, kind of like that visu mentally, kind of like to have that mental map of the chart. Yeah, so I guess it's a pretty good tool for that as well.
Thank you. I totally agree, and I think and still we have to work on making it more apparent and easy to grasp. But basically, we combine. So currently, when people are building, working with data, they start with analyzing it. I mean, data scientists have their own tools. Business professionals usually use a spreadsheet tool, functions, pivot tables. They make basically smaller spreadsheets of the big one, then they pick a chart type to visualize that data, and then they add it to a presentation tool. Now, what we do here is we try to intertwine these three things. So, exploration, finding the insight, charting, which is obviously we visualize data right from the get go, and then storytelling. So, the benefit here is that you can also currently, if you realize you didn't build a chart that somebody at the end when you're making the presentation would be looking for, or didn't make it with the right settings, then you have to go back to your data. So you have to go back two steps, and just you can redo it and then send it over in a matter of hours or something. When you're talking about a board meeting, that's not the ideal solution. Whereas with Visu, you can always switch between these modes. So when there's a follow-up question, you can, if the data has that the answer, that kind of level of detail, for example, then you can answer the question on the spot. You can go back to exploring, you can go back to editing, and these, so intertwining exploration and explanation is something we are super focused on, and I think it can be. So data scientists these days also do the same thing. They use visualizations, at least to my understanding, at the very beginning of an ad hoc analysis project and towards the very end. And we hope that Vizu can just help them, use the same way of approach, the same logic for both, and help them with the analysis from in the very beginning towards the very end, and maybe connecting the two.
Right, right. Yeah, you mentioned briefly about like the elements of a visualization, kind of like the data points, the vertical or horizontal format of the data, the labeling. Is that available on the documentation website of Visu?
Absolutely, and this is the one thing that I forgot to show you during my live demo. And thanks for reminding me, Chanin. I'm super grateful for that. Otherwise, my co-founder would have made a comment. So here is how your data should look like. You can always, so if you click on the required data format, it will be here. So basically, it has to be in the first normal format. So each category should have its own columns. Like here, it doesn't work because different months are in different columns. But here, we just put months as a separate column, and now we know that this is the item sold. So this is the way you need to transform your data. This is very typical, actually, for BI tools, for example, or for more advanced analytical tools. But this is these are the two things you have to keep in mind. Each category and quantity basically should have its own column, and that's about it. This is not very memory efficient, I know, but in order to be able to combine the categories and the quantities, and to keep the flexibility as high as we can, you need your data in this format. And as I said, we already realized from the alpha period and the closed beta that we had, that this is one of the key challenges for users we need to address. So we will, and lucky for us, these new Gen AI tools are pretty good in data transformation. So we plan to use them to help people prep their data and don't want to send them back to make complex data transformation things using pivot tables or whatnot. For data scientists, I guess it's a little easier.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you briefly mentioned about Visu being an open source project. Could you tell us a little bit about like the channels where developers could contribute to this open source project?
Absolutely, and I can't over state how important being open source and getting feedback and contributions from the open source community have been for us. And so all the code is on GitHub. If you look for Vizzu HQ, like headquarters on GitHub, you will find all of the repositories that we created. We actually even have an open source tool that lets you visualize your code in VS Code, that encourage to anyone to use for housekeeping purposes. It's called CodeViz. And yeah, so there are also already obviously some issues marked with the ones that are good for beginners or good for people who are just starting out for Vizzu are specifically marked. And we have a community on Slack that you can join. If you go to any of our sites, you will receive or you will see an invitation link, and we'll be there to help you get started either with the contributions or just using Vizzu and building stuff with our tool. We're always very happy to share things that can be shared publicly that people build with our tool. And I always get this question whether how we can relate with the SaaS tool that is currently for free, and later on we will obviously start charging for it at one point in time, and the open source tools that are and will remain free. And so the way I see it is that in order to use our open source tools, you have to have a very high level of expertise, either as a data scientist or a programmer. And so those are targeted for people with this kind of expertise. They have the full flexibility of the engine, all the options that are available for them, but they have to invest in understanding the abstract logic and this specific approach of Vizu. Whereas for the SaaS tool, the no-code tool is for end users who don't have to have a high level of analytical and coding or data visualization expertise, and they can use that. So we basically provide them in a very safe and easy to use environment. So I think we would want to focus, and we still release the newest developments on the engine and on the coding interfaces as open source. And we are happy to help people embed our technology into their own tools. We think that this is more than just a technology. It's a know-how, it's an approach, and it can be a movement. So we would love to see more Vizzu charts used within with other solutions, and then we're happy to help people to do that.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I think we would like to know like what is the future of Visu?
Yeah, so I think we have to go back to Andrew's initial video with the endless canvas, with people just freely interacting with their data. So that's actually what we're working towards on the longer term. That's good where dashboarding, reporting, data storytelling, exploration all becomes one, or we will be we can use the same single graphical user interface for data. That's the vision we're working towards. On the shorter term, it's basically making this animated data storytelling tool that we just released a lot more handy, help turn it into an end-to-end solution, help people plug in their data, take away the pain of data transformation, giving them suggestions on how to make their story stand out, how to build narrative arcs, how to stylize their story in a way that, for example, their company's brand guidelines would expect. And then on the very end of the process, where you already have your Vizu, we need to help people to share the story or to take the content, export it, and then use it within other tools that they are currently using, presentation tools, for example. And these are really, I think, important additions. We want to heavily like help people share content publicly and help people create content and then popularize it. So we will focus on that too.
Right. Yeah, definitely helpful. Yeah, so I guess like we're covered a lot on Visu. If we could maybe zoom out a little bit and look at kind of like what does a typical day to day looks like for you as the co-founder CEO of Visu.
All right. Let me see. So it was 8 a.m. in the morning. Nobody's around me when I sat down doing this podcast for you, with you, and I don't say I do that every day, but every day is different. So like being the CEO of an early stage startup means that you're basically a firefighter trying to put out some fires. So there are these depictions of early stage startups as there are always multiple fires burning, some bigger ones, some smaller ones, and as the CEO, you just have to make a conscious decision on what you will focus on that day. You have to understand that you cannot put out all the fires, not like that day, but basically ever in the next longer period of time. And you have to just realize which fires are the dangerous ones. And I think one of the other key aspects of my work is to always understand how other members of the team feel, how well equipped they are to do their job, how I can help them, just assist them doing a better job or being more efficient. And this is always like, I think it requires a lot of empathy and also
Mhm.
understanding, at least the basic understanding of what different people in our team are optimizing for or contributing to, and trying to understand how I can be helpful. Sometimes leaving them to on their own is the most helpful thing I can do, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for enlightening us with some of the underlying things that you're doing as the CEO. Yeah. So perhaps some final words about like how users could check out Visu and some of the exciting stuff that you're building.
Sure. So as I said, just go to vizzu.io and hit that get started for free button. and then you will be good to go. And then you can start fiddling either with your own data or with the samples that we provided for you. This is a desktop first app right now, so I would encourage you to do it on your desktop. And yes, one of the things we're going to work on, and that I haven't mentioned before, is to make the mobile experience better.
Mhm.
There are, so like for example, that complex editor interface, which is some way the heart and soul of what Vizzu is currently. Uh, I don't think it would fit well into like a mobile screen, but
Mhm.
but for example, for a tablet, that's something that where Vizu can be very when become very handy. And playing data stories, so looking through data stories,
Mhm.
that can already be done, and most of them will be clearly visible and useful already on a smaller screen. We this tool will remain free for the next foreseeable period of time, because we want to gather feedback. We are going to be very focused on reaching out to enthusiastic users of Vizu, and people who bounce also, and try to understand what they were looking for, how we can make the experience more convenient. It's again, it's a very specific challenge, trying to make such a complex tool technology be very handy, and I love this specific challenge. I love working on it, and right now that we are in public beta and we have the users to reach out to, I just can't
Mhm.
wait to hear them out. So this is what we're going to be focused on the short term, with and heavily building on generative AI, and again making everything even more accessible.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So it's a big pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure for me as well. Thank you for having me here, Chen.